ask everyone to take their seats, please? We're about to start the program. Please, I invite you to sit down. There are many seats on the middle rows here and on the sides. Good evening, everyone. I'm Sheila Coronel. I'm Dean of Academic Affairs here at the Journalism School. I also run the investigative reporting program here. Welcome, alumni. It's a great weekend to have Alumni Weekend. Welcome to our students. Tonight we have the second of 2 Hearst digital media lectures. Thanks to the generosity of the Hearst Foundation, we are able to bring every year to the Journalism School a prominent practitioner in the field of digital media to come and talk to our students and to our alumni. This year's Hearst Digital Media Professional in Residence, as these positions are called, is Meredith Artley, who's here to my left. Meredith will moderate this year's panel called Platform Palooza. She is editor-in-chief of CNN Digital, where she oversees the editorial initiatives for CNN.com, CNN Mobile, and the CNN Wire. In this role, Meredith leads a team of 130 talented reporters, editors, and producers, and who fuel one of the world's top online destinations for news, views, and video. Under her leadership, CNN Digital hosts 70 million monthly visitors and has remained #1 in mobile news and the most followed news organization on social media. Before joining CNN, Meredith was managing editor for the Los Angeles Times and executive editor of LATimes.com. Prior to that, she was based in Paris as the editor and digital development director for the International Herald Tribune. Meredith began her career at the New York Times, where she pioneered web journalism in the very early days of the web, starting out as a web producer and eventually managing editor of the editorial team of NewYorkTimes.com. She was part of the Pulitzer Prize-winning team for the Times' Race in America series in 2000. So just a word about this lecture series. Journalism School has had the opportunity to invite significant leaders in digital media to take up the Hearst Professional in Residence position. Past honorees have been Mario Garcia of Garcia Media, Amanda Cox of the New York Times, Krishna Bharat, creator of Google News, venture capitalist Ken Lehrer, and journalist Stephen Johnson, Brian Storm, Adrian Halavati. In the fall, Meredith gave a very inspiring and insightful lecture on the collision of 2 worlds, the world of television and the world of the internet. Today, she and her panel will talk about further collisions, the world of media and the world of journalism and the world of social media platforms. So I hand over the platform to Meredith. Thank you, Meredith, and thank you, our panelists, for being here. Thank you.
Okay, so hi, thank you all for being here on a Friday night. This is what everybody wants to be doing on a Friday night, so it means a lot that you're here. I want to introduce 2 absolute powerhouses of journalism, media, digital publishing. Cory, right here, closest to me. She's the Chief Strategy Officer. Is that still your title? Yeah, okay. Of Mic. And I think she's gotten promoted like 2-3 times since she's been there. So she leads strategy across edit, product, and sales for Mic, which is just expanding and exploding. And Cory and I have known each other for a while, mostly through the board for the Online News Association. And she's got a lot of impressive stuff on her bio that you can find in all places if you Google her. So I will not go through that. She's got a big job here. She just came from the Washington Post, where she was a huge part of their growth and success. And now she's at Mic. But I will say more importantly about Cory is she's creative and inspiring, and she has a dress that has it's made out of newspapers, and she's just a wonderful, talented person. Next to Cory is Dao, and Dao is the publisher of BuzzFeed, and Dao I can read the intro graph because I should do that. She oversees the company's technology, product, data, and publishing platforms. Dao and I also know each other because she headed up Le Monde Interactif, and we knew each other in Paris. And she's just smart, straight up. She's one of the people who says something in any kind of conversation about where our industry is headed, and you say, holy cow, that was a really smart insight. So you'll get to hear from both of them, and I'm really excited and honored to have them here as people who I admire in the industry and as friends. And I did ask them, I said, this is going to be a wonderful opportunity to talk to students and alumni about the exciting things and the transformation that is exponentially happening within our industry. And I said, so it would be wonderful if you could come. And they said they'd think about it, and I said, I'll buy you drinks afterwards. And they said, absolutely. So thank you for being here. So here's how this will go. I will talk for 10 minutes or less. I want to share an example of what I have half-jokingly called Platformapalooza. And then Cory's going to do the same thing, and then Dao's going to do the same thing. So we'll each talk for about 10 minutes. We'll have a little bit of discussion, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. And we're each going to share some practical examples of the shift that has happened and is continuing to happen at a very rapid rate that has taken journalism beyond publishing a simple story, whether it's on a website, on the front page of a newspaper, a package on TV, and having that be the beginning and the end of it. We are now in a world where the story is at the center, and there are a multiplying number of ways that you need to edit and craft and think about those stories on a variety of platforms and a variety of formats for a variety of audiences. So let me show you an example. I'm going to go to this podium here. Okay, so last month we had a team of Clarissa Ward and Selma Abdelizaz go undercover into a part of Syria where Western journalists have not been in about a year. And it is a really powerful story, and we weren't sure if they were going to get access. We weren't sure what kind of story they were going to come out with, but we knew a couple of things going into it. Syria is, of course, an important story to tell on a lot of angles, and CNN and many news organizations have done a lot on Syria. And arguably there's a lot more to do. But we sent Clarissa and Selma there, and we said, you're going to need to go undercover. They were veiled, basically posing as fighters' wives. The first thing we started with, in most instances you start with a story. The thing you start with in a story like this is security and safety. Our executive vice president of CNN International, Tony Maddox, the number of journalists that CNN sends around the world in dangerous places like this, that's the first thing you think of. How do we get people, is it safe enough to go in? And if so, how do you get people safely in and safely out? So you start with that, especially in a case like this. And then you start with, one core thing to mention about this story is that this isn't, if anyone thinks CNN is a television network, you're wrong. It's just not that anymore. It's a multi-platform journalism company, globally distributed across multiple screens around the world. So we started with thinking about what are the elements that we'll want for our many digital platforms, our mobile website, our mobile apps, our massive and myriad social accounts, our desktop sites. What do we want in video? What might we want in text? We just started thinking very broadly. What kind of presentations might we want to think about for TV? But of course, you don't know until you get in and until they got out. So we started with a very small team because when you're doing something like this, you don't want to tell a whole lot of people about it. Part of that safety, part of that is that competitive exclusivity that you think of when you're doing a story like this. So they got in safely, they got out. And when they got out, what happened is a material dump, a brain dump, lots and lots of conversations to look through what they got and what happened. And when we learned about what they got, what they saw, what happened to them, the people they talked to on the ground, we knew we had something stunning, special, shocking. I want to show you a little video here. Just give you a glimpse of this.
I've been now to Syria over a dozen times, I would say, since the uprising in 2011. I've been there many more times before that as well. What always surprises me is that every time you're there, you really think that it couldn't be any worse.
This building was hit by 2 rockets. They call it the double tap.
And yet, every trip I've done, the situation actually is continuously getting worse.
الحمد لله على السلامة يا حجي. فيك فاضي؟ فيك؟ خصف فلوسي.
We realized that in order to do this trip safely and sensibly, we would have to be extremely low profile, essentially working undercover.
So when our producers in London, in Atlanta, in New York got a sense of what this raw material looked like, we knew we had just something absolutely amazing and a story that we needed to be very intentional about in terms of how we told it. We knew it wasn't going to be enough to even do on a 24/7 globally distributed network and digital empire to just do a big story and push it out there and tweet about it and do a Facebook post about it. We knew we needed to come up with a complete rollout plan. And one of the reasons why I wanted to mention this, and I see a few familiar faces, but when I talked to the students in the fall, there were a lot of questions about all of the things that takes to go into doing a big story like this. I felt like I got a lot of questions from students who really just wanted to work on a big, long documentary or do a big, long-form magazine piece. Those things are great and fine. But my message to them was that's not all you do. There's the act of publishing is the beginning, not the end. So we came up with a plan, and there's a series of emails that kind of go through, like, this is what we're going to do over the course of 9 days for this story. We're going to edit video in a certain kind of way. We're going to actually promote it using a trailer, is what we called it internally, because we felt like it was so dramatic. So we started on a Friday in March, second week of March, and we said before the story even publishes, we're going to put this out.
There are snipers all around, but this is now the only road to get into Aleppo.
That's it. So think about, and that beat is the double tap that she referenced before. So that was a nod to that. And one of the reasons why, and the graphics are really big, they look gigantic on this screen. One of the reasons, by the way, is that the graphics are there, and you see this a lot. It's not just CNN that does this. Mic, BuzzFeed, a lot of organizations do this these days. The graphics are on screen because, especially when you're putting something on social, most people watch it on their phones with the audio down or off. So I mention that as one tiny piece, one way to think about everything that we had to think about how to tell this story. There was a 1,200-word story that was part of it. We needed to really craft that. We needed to spend hours and hours and hours. A woman named Rachel Clark, who's one of our top editors for CNN Digital globally, she spent a long time working with Clarissa and Selma, really thinking of what are the. This is not a news story. This is a story about people who are trying to live their lives. They're trying to go to the fruit market and buy some oranges, and then they get bombed. So we wanted to bring forth the tension and the drama and what was happening on the ground in a place that frankly had not been visited in a long time by Western media. So there was a trailer on Facebook that was pushed out about 3 days before any part of the story went on any platform. There was a hashtag undercover in Syria that we started teasing to get people, to tell people that this was coming. A story of this magnitude deserves this kind of promotion and thoughtful planning in order to cut through the noise that is, our digital lives these days. So we edited things specifically. This is what we did on Instagram. This is one of the characters. He's in the story. This is what we posted on our Instagram account. We thought about this image. We thought about doing a single quote from him on it. And then we wanted to push that out on Instagram. So we had a Facebook plan. We had an Instagram plan. We had the hashtag for Twitter. This story right here that I showed you the video at the top of, this was the core element. And the amount of work that you need to think about that goes into a story like this, obviously you have story shapers and editors from the all-important kind of big think backfield, big picture editors to the copy editors and the line editors who are critical, to the video editors who are going through the raw material, to the motion graphics editors that think about the graphics. Do we add music to it? If so, when do we do that? How do we do that tastefully in an attempt to create the impact that we want to create? There's a planning producer and editor who communicates exactly what's going to roll out on which platform and when. There was someone who was the shooter and the editor of this 360 photo that we put in it. Oh, it goes kind of fast here. Again, just another attempt at immersing. This is what they saw. This is where they were. That's the image they took. And multiple pieces of video, of course, maps and graphics, all in a place where people had not been in all stories that we have not seen. And again, apologies. I know some of this video and some of these images are kind of tough to see on a Friday night. And then at the end of this, there's a video timeline, which was essentially an attempt to make sure that with a story that was this up close and personal, for those of you who have read or will read, please and thank you, Clarissa and Salma's important reporting, critical global reporting. This was an attempt to zoom out a little bit. She's got a lot of, it's focused on people, it's focused on characters, it's focused on showcasing the real emotion that's happening in and outside of Aleppo. And this was a timeline to show a little bit of, let's back this up and put some of this into context. All of this need to be thought of with mobile first in mind, because at CNN, like a lot of news organizations, that's where the majority of our audiences are these days. So it's, I'm showing this to you here on a laptop, mainly because that's the way the room is set up, but this is not the way that most people saw it. Most people saw it on mobile. And then I want to show you one other thing we did, and then I'm going to hand it over to Cory. This is Clarissa, not veiled. We planned for a Facebook Live, which she did from the newsroom here at Columbus Circle.
Dangerous. There's a threat of kidnapping. Turkish authorities have made it really difficult to move through that border. And then, of course, there is the relentless bombardment from both the regime of Bashar al-Assad, but also from Russia, which intervened in Syria beginning last September. You can watch all of our coverage, as it will be rolling out over the course of the next few days at cnn.com/Syria. We have a ton of really interesting material, exclusive images, things that you certainly haven't seen before. Maybe you've seen them in grainy.
So she goes on. This is almost a 20-minute Facebook Live where she's taking questions from our audiences. This was part of the day, I think it was 3 or 4 aspect of planning this story. Lest any of you think, oh, this is just CNN, you know, the promotion machine in full drive. You're right, it is. That's what we do with a story like this. It has to be seen and heard in as many ways as possible. Most people aren't necessarily checking CNN.com at the exact time on their phones or their desktops that we're putting stories up. They're looking at this, they're finding this in their feeds, they're seeing the discussion, they're seeing it in multiple ways in multiple places. So we go all in on something like this. A couple of stats, and then Cory, it's all you. The digital first cut of this video, the clip I showed you at the start of this, it was the most watched across our sites globally for a few days. So anyone who says that audiences don't care about Syria, that they want, I don't know, something less horrific, people cared about this. People wanted to see that. It had the video had a 74 completion rate on mobile. So this is part, when I was talking to the students in the fall, this is part of the data that we look at, and this is part of the plan, is to see how our audiences are consuming it. If a video gets over a 50% completion rate, meaning watching, you know, are you going to watch it all the way to the end? That's 100%. That's really outstanding. This is really good. The story, the main story that I showed you, this is kind of the big asset. That was, this had an average time spent of 6.5 minutes, which is absolutely incredible. I mean, just think about how so many of us just kind of click around and see something and click off. So people were really digging in and spending time on this. And that Facebook Live that I showed you a clip of from Clarissa, that reached almost 2 million people. So that's an example of multi-platform, thinking about where your audiences are with the stories that matter, sculpting and editing the stories in many different forms and formats on many different platforms, and then having a programming plan, essentially, globally across all of those places, and then measuring the success of it. So, of course, I'm proud of this. I'm immensely proud of the team who did it, and I thought it was a good example for our topic tonight. And with that, and hopefully the heavy part is over, with that, Cory Haik.
Hi, everybody. And thanks, Meredith. That was, wow, that's a hard act to follow. That's just great journalism. Okay, so I'll first start off by telling you guys a little bit about Mic. Actually, I'm going to ask how many of you guys know about Mic? I mean, you're all journalists, so like, yeah, okay, good. I would expect you all to know about Mic. I'm actually relatively new. I've been at Mic for 4 months, coming most recently from the Washington Post, where I was for about 5 years. And I decided to make the switch to Mic because of its journalistic intentions. And it's all about platforms and all about digital, and it's wonderful that way, but also it really does aim to do some ambitious work squarely targeted to the millennial generation. Young people care about news. It happens to be true, and it's great. So Mic reaches about 30 million college-educated millennials a month. That's not too shabby, actually, to CNN's like 70 million. Mic's, you guys have a little bit of a head start. Mic's been around for close to 5 years. It started out as Policy Mic. It's now Mic, like microphone. And that's probably like the perfect name for the platform palooza that we all live in. So what I wanted to talk to you guys about tonight, and I'm grateful to be up here grateful to be at Columbia and grateful to be among some really talented women in media. But I wanted to talk about a project we actually just launched on Wednesday called Enough. And it resonates for me to actually be on a college campus talking about this. So this is a project, it was a cross-desk, cross-functional project for Mike's scrappy team of, by the way, 130 people total at our company, about 70 of which work in the newsroom, came together to produce this. Mike had the opportunity to sit down with President Joe Biden last Friday. That's a big get for a company like Mike. Joe Biden's on the circuit talking about his college sexual assault initiative, It's on Us. He was at UC Boulder, and we've been pressing and pressing for access to talk to him about this because it's just something that resonates with our audience. 1 in 4, 1 in 5, 1 in 6, the statistics are varying, but generally there are around 1 in 4 women sexual experience a form of sexual assault on a college campus. That's outrageous. So we wanted to take a look at the state of college sexual assault. Our audience is particularly interested in this. We reach 70% of our audience is millennials. A good 60% of that audience is female. We have a really large sort of, social justice, feminist, body positive audience that's looking for this kind of material. And so we said, you know what, we're going to get to sit down with Joe Biden. That's really cool in and of its own right. And we could just do an interview with him. That would be fun to push out across all of our platforms. But why don't we aim for something a little more substantive? How can we do some journalism around this? So we, pooled all of our resources and marshaled our best editors and writers to come up with something. So really, in a matter of 5 days, put together 6 different stories, a very, very beautifully shot video package, and then a series of, actually rolled out a new story template on our site, and series of sort of mini productions across all of our platforms, which I don't have pulled up, but across Instagram, across Snapchat, Twitter Moments. We used every single format known and did sort of individual platform work there. We called it our platform matrix. We had a platform czar from the beginning of the plan. So I'll just kind of scroll. Actually, you know what? I'll show you the video first.
Rape culture isn't just me, the victim, and my attacker. It's all of you who see his behavior and don't say anything. It's all of you who see that I'm too drunk to be going home with anybody and you don't stop me. It's all of you who see him abusing women and don't go up to him and be like, yo, what are you doing? Or kick him out, or like, it's all of us.
Carmenife Paulino was raped in the basement of a fraternity, just 2 months into her freshman year at Wesleyan University. She tried to repress it, but after years of silence, Carmenife couldn't take it anymore. She reported the rape to campus administration her junior year.
It was just such a dehumanizing process, and it could have been, it did not have to be that way. It just seemed cruel.
With low reporting and conviction rates, sexual violence on campuses has become a national epidemic. A recent survey found 1 in 4 female students experience some form of unwanted sexual contact before they graduate. And yet, 80% of campus rapes go unreported to the police.
Too many women and men on and off college campuses are still victims of sexual abuse.
With the leadership of Vice President Joe Biden, the White House is taking a stand and engaging some of the biggest names in Hollywood. You have been fighting violence against women for decades, yes. And your current initiative, It's on Us, asks students and their peers to step forward and speak out. Why is this your current approach to campus sexual assault?
Well, I did virtual town meetings with a lot of colleges as students, as well as high school students. And I asked a question. I said, if we could do anything to change the circumstances on campus, what would it be? I expected them to say more lighting in parking garages, more campus cops. You know what the number one thing was? Get men involved.
It's on Us promotes bystander intervention, a strategy that encourages both women and men to safely intervene in situations that look harmful to others. So I actually just graduated from college, not even a year ago. And that statistic that 1 in 4 women will be assaulted during their time there always sticks with me. But also that only 6% of college presidents right now acknowledge that rape is an issue on their campus.
That's right.
How do you react to that, and what do you think explains that disconnect?
The disconnect is they know it's happening, but they're afraid it will hurt the reputation of their institutions, their competitive advantage. I'm about to call another meeting, have college presidents come back to Washington, tell me what they're doing. Actually challenge them not to show up. It's their responsibility. They have an obligation. This is a toxin on college campuses. Universities can do something about it.
Advocates like feminist writer Jessica Valenti are pushing for more than just bystander intervention. They want to focus more on perpetrators and the cultures they thrive in.
I think of bystander intervention as one piece of like a really big puzzle. I also am extremely concerned about this idea that we're not getting to the root of the issue.
Let's call them out. Like, what are the elements of culture that allow rapists to flourish?
When we say things like, well, she shouldn't have been drinking, or he shouldn't have been wearing that. When you set up this culture that blames victims instead of putting the blame where it belongs on perpetrators, you are giving rapists this sort of wiggle room to get away with things.
This culture of ours is upside down. We got to change it. Where a woman no longer asks the question, what did I do? Or no judge or prosecutor ever says, what were you wearing? It's irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
Cultural change doesn't happen overnight, but Carmenife is hopeful. Her rapist was eventually expelled.
All right, I won't have you watch the entire thing, but it's mic.com/enough if you'd like to see it to finish the package. So that was a video package that was done around the Biden interview. And the woman, the correspondent, Antonia Hilton, she did just graduate from college last spring. It's remarkable, from Harvard. She's been at Mic less than a year, obviously, as an associate producer working on a video team. And when we got this opportunity to do this interview, we thought, who's going to do this interview? And we talked about it, and we sort of have a couple of folks that would have been great for it, and it just clicked. Antonia, she's a woman who just graduated from college. Who better to ask the questions around campus sexual assault and holding our leaders accountable than someone who was just there? So that in and of itself made it very authentic to Mic's demographic, and I think really resonated with our audience. Let's see if I can get out of this and show you the full. The full layout. So the video, and I'll just quickly go into sort of the more platform side. I can't scroll. The video sits within this like really beautiful experience that we built specifically for this story. And the piece was anchored by a woman who, this is her, Samita. She's been at Mic for also less than a year. She runs our identities section. I believe Mic is one of the only news organizations in the country, and we were the first to actually create an identities desk. This is very connected to the issues and the filter that we look at to actually do coverage, and this was her first byline. And she's really written a lot about this topic in her career. She came from feministing. And so she sort of wrote a definitive piece on where campus sexual assault is, and just sexual assault at large, and then took a critical eye on the It's On Us campaign. Scroll through, and you get to your nice infographics, different chapters. All of these related pieces were done by different reporters at Mic across various desks. And I think we have a couple of other pieces, a couple of other video pieces, more infographics. Read more. And it's a nice, beautiful parallax scrolling. The background color changes as you scroll. Somebody, I don't know whose computer, can I like Mic on Facebook? Cool, I just did that. So your computer, you now like Mic. Okay. So in the package, obviously, like for mobile, it's formatted quite beautifully. We built a special version of this entire package for instant articles. On instant articles, it actually leverages a couple of features within instant articles. There's an audio feature, there's a photo feature where you tilt your phone and you sort of get this panoramic effect. For Snapchat, we built something entirely different across all the platforms, just like Meredith was talking about with their package, which is what you have to do immediately when you start to put something together that's ambitious. I did it in a couple of days, but really I think the most definitive part here is the journalism that we did across all those platforms, and it feels really good. So I will turn this over to Dao, but I encourage you guys to check it out and share it and tweet it, and I would love any and all of your feedback. So thanks.
All right, so I'm sorry, I'm not going to talk about anything serious tonight. I'm repping BuzzFeed. Okay, everyone, who's heard of BuzzFeed? Okay, everyone's heard of BuzzFeed. Who here? Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. How many people here have watched or read a piece of BuzzFeed content in the last, since the beginning of the year? Okay. How many people here have read or watched a piece of BuzzFeed content in the last month? Okay. How about the last week? All right. So I'm gonna talk about where is my? Oh, here it is. Okay. Nope. Here it is. I'm gonna talk about something called Tasty. But the first thing I want to say is that, just very quickly, BuzzFeed is a global media company now. And basically at the beginning of 2015, our CEO, Jonah Peretti, rolled out a strategy to the company where he said, we have been primarily a website and mobile apps. But now what we should do is we should really think about ourselves as a distributed media company where we distribute all of our content all over the web, and our content should be viewed there. We shouldn't have to feel like we have to bring people back to our website. And so he gave a very compelling argument about why this is the case. And then we all said, okay, let's do this. And then in March he rolled it out. He rolled it out to the world at South by Southwest, and very, very quickly what we saw was that it was a very smart move. We very quickly became a dominant media company by really embracing this distributed strategy. And interestingly enough, a lot of other media companies followed suit. So I forgot to pull this up in advance, but just to give you a sense of the scale of how the distributed strategy really changed us. So this is an article I wrote on the BuzzFeed blog about how we think about data, and some charts too. This is a GIF that shows how BuzzFeed publishing has evolved since 2007. And basically in 2015, now this is what we publish everywhere. We have many different teams. In 2007, we had editorial publishing at BuzzFeed.com. Then we added creative team. We have BFMP. We're just everywhere. And so it makes basically my life incredibly difficult, this new reality. Sometimes I long for the days when only 2 years ago, we were not having to deal with all of these different platforms. But you can't really turn the time back, so you got to keep going forward. So and then this chart really shows the brilliance of Jonah's strategy. Basically, the red is BuzzFeed.com and apps. Blue is video, and green is other distributors, primarily Snapchat, and then there's also Instagram and everything like that. And so you can see that, BuzzFeed, we're a video company. Look at that. That is enormous, right? Obviously, that's just content views, and content views are measured differently everywhere. And so we look at other metrics too. Look at time spent. If you look at time spent, it's a little different. So you can see that maybe a third of the time spent is on the site, and maybe 2/3 of it is on video. And so obviously our website is extremely valuable. We monetize it really well, and we continue to monetize it really well, and people spend a lot of time there, and they see a lot of content. But you can't deny that the fastest growing part of our business both in audience as well as actually revenue, is on the video side. So there's a bunch of other stuff. You can look at subscriptions, other things. We're really big. I mean, 6 billion monthly content views, and that's like, you know, already out of date. And you want to find it? Just Google BuzzFeed, how BuzzFeed thinks about data. Some charts too. So I want to tell a story of Tasty. So Tasty is, how many people have watched a Tasty video on Facebook? Not very many, wow. That's impressive because we have 50 million fans on Facebook, 50 million, and we didn't even start it until August. So the story behind Tasty is really interesting. And it really, the reason I want to talk about it is because it really illustrates well what we always say is the real core of BuzzFeed, which is not just that we make great content, but it's the process by which we make content, right? People always think about BuzzFeed as like, oh, BuzzFeed, first we made lists, and then we made quizzes, and now we make videos, and that's what and we also have, by the way, a giant news organization. We actually have 150 journalists on BuzzFeed News globally. And they break all kinds of crazy stories, but I'm not talking about that tonight. And so, but the way, so people think about us as like, oh, this is what you are. Like BuzzFeed just like, we make lists, you make quizzes, you make videos, you write news. But actually what really encapsulates BuzzFeed is not what the end product, it's the process by which we make the end product. So this is the story of how the process by which we made Tasty this global phenomenon. In February of last year, this food video was made by our BuzzFeed food team in New York. And I don't even have audio on because like most people don't actually watch it with audio on. And at the time, the BuzzFeed food channel was actually pretty small. It wasn't that big. But we immediately saw that it got like huge engagement and like a really big number of views for the size of that page. And then throughout the course of the spring, the BuzzFeed food team would continue to make some of these videos that that we just thought that we were just every time we were just surprised at how much people really loved them. And then we launched Tasty, which is this page in July of last year. As you can see, it has 51 million fans now, already out of date. And it is basically this phenomenon. I'm going to show you this one because this is just a great video. Roast lamb. I made this actual lamb for Easter.
Oh, yes!
Every Tasty video ends with, oh, yes. And so that's just an example of the Tasty format. And so when we launched Tasty in July of last year, so really pretty much August, it was the fastest growing Facebook page Facebook has ever seen. It reached 1 million fans in it reached 1 million fans in, I think, well, I can't remember. I will show you a chart later where I'll tell you, you can see that very quickly. And then, and then by the time that happened, Jonah had evolved our strategy, and he's like, you know what, like, we were so successful in our distributed media strategy, like, really within 8 months, we basically became a distributed media company, which, you know, you don't really expect for your CEO to be like, I have a new strategy for the company, and then like within 8 months, we've like executed that strategy to amazing success. And he's like, well, okay, so the next stage is, you know, we are a global cross-platform company. So basically, like, anything that we do really well, it should be global, and it should be cross-platform. So we're like, okay, Tasty. So then obviously then Tasty started going on all different platforms, and then we started launching Tasty in different countries. We launched Proper Tasty. So this is Proper Tasty. We launched Proper Tasty in the fall, which is, Proper Tasty is the UK version of Tasty, so now we have a team there. And what's interesting with Tasty is that you can also monetize it really well. This video was done in partnership with Bailey's. And so not only are we, you know, making awesome French toast that will make you feel great on a Sunday morning, we're also making money for the company to support all kinds of wonderful things that we do. Okay. And then we launched Tasty Demais. Well, I'm not saying it right. Who speaks Portuguese? Basically, it's the Portuguese version of Tasty. And then basically, what we saw, I'm going to show you this chart here. Why is this thing so huge? Okay, days to 1 million likes. Basically what you see is this red thing. Okay, so it took us a month to get to 1 million likes for Tasty. Proper Tasty, it took us 2 weeks. Tasty Brazil, it took us less than 3 weeks. Obviously, you know, like the Portuguese community is, Brazil community is much smaller than the English-speaking community, so it's going to take you longer. And so every single time that we were able to launch a new Tasty page for a different country, a different market, we were able to basically accelerate its growth. And that was something that we had never done systematically, right? So now it's like we have this like systematic playbook by which we can become dominant in a different market. And so since then, we have launched Tasty in France, Tasty in Mexico, and Tasty in Germany, where we have different places, we have different markets, and then and other markets are coming. And then the last thing I want to sort of show you is, and then in terms of like things that we learned, so one thing we tried in the fall was like, oh, okay, let's try doing a Tasty for style. We called it Top Knot, and that was a really interesting thing. So we tried Tasty for style, and it became very quickly about hair. That's the thing that seemed to work. And so, you know, like showing videos of like how to do your hair, and it was pretty good. It was pretty good. I mean, so much so that some of our competitors started, like, we noticed that they started launching new Facebook pages to compete against Top Knot. But even for us, we were like, you know, it was pretty good. We're still doing it. I think it has a lot of promise. But like, I bet you like we didn't do it as well as we could have. We're like, okay, let's see if we can replicate the Tasty success in a different, not just a different market, right, which we're doing, but in a different topic, different subject matter. And so we said, okay, let's do it for home improvement. So we launched Nifty in March. It took less than 7 days to get to 1 million likes. That's the blue line right here. So Nifty now, after, so here's an example of a Nifty video. Nifty now has, I think, 4 million likes in 4 weeks. This is a DIY cat tent. I know it's cheating, it's all about cats. But the point is that like there are things that we learned about Top Knot, about the launch of Top Knot and the continued growth of Top Knot, that we were like, you know, let's like really dive in. Like Top Knot is great, like millions and millions of fans. Like many publishers would be thrilled to have Top Knot, right? But like, how can we really, really kill it? And we really killed it with Nifty. So, this video has 60 million views, right? On a page that when we launched it had zero fans. And so, and the other thing that I want to say is like, how does this like relate to journalism, right? Like, like Meredith and Cory like told you this like really heavy stories, and to be honest, like I thought about it and I talked to Meredith. I said, you guys are gonna like talk about these like very serious topics. Like, I can talk about, like I was like, we published a huge investigative story in January called The Tennis Racket about match fixing in tennis. And I'm like, that was an interesting story because like we launched it and then we had it translated into Japanese. It became huge in Japan because tennis is a global sport, and we translated all these languages and like it did really well, and it like brought in lots of new people. I could talk about that, and we made videos. And I was like, or I could talk about Tasty, global phenomenon, 50 million, like literally. I think Facebook literally told us that 380 million people have watched a Tasty video. That's more people than live in the United States. And like Facebook knows number of people, not the number of like views, right? We have like billions of views. This is like people, individual people, because Facebook, you log in to Facebook. Anyway, so how does this like have to do with journalism? Like basically the way we think about it is like it's a process, right? You learn things about how to go to different markets. You learn things about how to grow one page from another page. You learn all those things, and then we apply all those learnings to our journalism business, to our news business, to great effect, right? The difference is that, like, we can have teams of people making, like, churning out tons of videos, right? Like, we don't have, like, investigative stories like Tennis Racket every day. We don't even have them every month, right? We've got 18 people on our investigative team right now across the world. And maybe each of them publish 2 or 3 stories a year because they've been working on it for months. That's investigative journalism. And so like you're not going to be able to, you don't have the volume of publishing to learn about how to do it well if you're only doing it for investigative journalism, because you just don't have it, right? But it's like we have it for all of our content, whether that's videos, like DIY, that's food, that's entertainment content. We obviously do a lot of entertainment content, and so it is. What's important is the process. You learn from the process. You recognize when you haven't done something well, and then you do it better next time. So that's my story.
So, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I want to go straight to Q&A because we're running long. I would like to point out BuzzFeed, Mic, and CNN is trying really hard at this too. Digital-centric plays, video-focused, a global audience, and specifically looking at how do we distribute content in places where those audiences are, with stories from the light side to the dark side, the heavy topics to the light. And it's a fascinating time. And it's worth noting, I started at the New York Times. The guy who hired me, Kevin McKenna, is here. So hi, Kevin, thank you. I appreciate the job offer. And Cory was at the Washington Post, and NOLA, and Dao was at Le Monde. And it's just amazing. This is the two of them, and I'm lucky to have them as comrades in arms and friends. The trajectories that our careers in and around journalism and how we tell stories and how we think about how we craft stories that need to be told in all ways and shapes and forms to a global audience strategically and smartly. That's what I think you'll see as a common thread here, that we spend a lot of our time focusing on how to do that with our teams. So thank you. Question number 1.
So obviously the way we distribute our journalism is changing very, very rapidly. CNN and BuzzFeed obviously have both used a lot of live video. I'm not sure if Mike has on Facebook. I assume so.
You should like us.
I guess my question is, do you view Facebook Live as a gimmick or more of a game changer, and why? And then kind of as a follow-up, did you find yourself gaining followers immediately after you started using it, or losing, or if you noticed any of those trends?
Facebook Live it can be a game changer, yes. I think that the kinds of, I think that it's a platform. Facebook's obviously a platform that has enormous reach, unprecedented reach, and the way that you can use their tools is, you can do a lot with it. I think that the kinds of things that are successful on live are not necessarily the kinds of things that are going to be successful on, like live TV, right? I don't think they're the same kinds of things, and that's definitely how we think about it in terms of gains and followers. I think that Facebook itself has changed the way that their users are notified of live video. So it used to be that if you liked a page and they had a live video, you would get notified. And it was really kind of annoying, to be honest. And then they quickly noticed that that was annoying, and so they turned it off. And so then it was less. We noticed that when there were too many notifications, people would unfollow, but then they would refollow again. But then when they modified their UX, then it got a lot better. So like for example, BuzzFeed had that exploding watermelon video. Who watched it? Thank you. It was amazing, and we gained a lot of followers for that.
This is a dumb question, but why are you so successful? What is it that you do that makes you so successful? I want to know, so I can be successful.
This
too.
is clearly a question for the three of us, and.
Why do you get it?
And we are having a session after this. It's a 5-hour-long session to dive into that question. All I can say is thank you for the compliment. I think the best honest, non-jokey answer I can give to that is, for me personally, I feel like great work with outstanding journalists who have inspired me along the way, and I've been able to hone my skills and work with fantastic people in awesome organizations, including obviously the one I'm at right now. It's not a solo act, right? For me, you work with good people and you kind of get this creative juju going on, and you try new things and you experiment, and you also watch what some of your friends and competitors are doing in the industry, and we just kind of move each other forward in all kinds of ways.
I can quickly answer that. I think for me, and I was just talking about this today actually, I've been fortunate to find myself in the middle of one of the greatest opportunities for journalism, and that just continues to open itself up for me. I've been in the business for 15 years really, and it's only been in digital, and it seems like every other year there's some major tech milestone that I embrace and work with teams on and gather teams around, and then there's some big news moment that happens that you launch on with that. Live will probably be one of them. It's an obvious one, but there's a couple of them that are launching this quarter, and then by the end of the year there will be something else. And so you just embrace and you move quickly and you take risks. A lot of experimentation, but it's all about timing. And to me, that's just sort of journalism, paying attention. So I feel fortunate, and I'm just surrounded by a lot of people that are very energetic the same way, and we just commit a lot of journalism.
What they said.
Great question.
Hi, my name is Cecile. I'm soon to graduate from this school. And my question's about the BuzzFeed Tasty videos. I noticed that, with the French channel, French culture, I'm half French, and I've noticed that when I read the comments on some of the videos, some of them are quite, not necessarily positive comments. Some of the comments are like, why would you make that? That's so obscene. That's too, it's a very unique culture. And I'm just wondering how it's been going with the French channel for that, and what have the numbers been like?
All the numbers are public, so you can just see them. I can just pull them up. I don't actually know offhand. We launched the French channel, I think, last week. Yeah, last week. So it's pretty recent. And I think that is true. But our French team, they definitely do understand that you can't just translate a video and think that it's going to be successful. One interesting thing that we did at the beginning one of our first very, very successful videos was about Nutella in the US. And the Brazil team took it and translated it into Portuguese and posted it. And the reactions actually were negative, not because it wasn't about how to make Nutella, it was like using Nutella in something or other. And the comments were like, Nutella is so expensive here. Like, who could possibly make this, right? And it's like, oh, that's like something that we should probably think about. Like, we should have videos that use ingredients that regular people can afford. And so that was a big learning moment for them in thinking about the kinds of videos that would work for their audience. So I'm sure that the French Tasty team and the French team in general is also going to be having, is also going to be working on that and thinking about those kinds of things as well. It is, it's a learning process, right?
It's amazing that Dao said that they just launched that last week. This week, a lot of us, maybe the three of us, launched on Facebook Messenger, maybe. This week, CNN launched on Line, which is an app that I know BuzzFeed is already on.
Yep.
Mike might be on too. I mean, it's just every week is a new launch with a new audience that exposes you to millions of people, so it's fantastic. Thank you for your question.
Could each of you talk about the revenue and which of these platforms is producing money for you as opposed to audience? And in particular with Dao, is Facebook producing revenue for you, or is Facebook collecting that revenue? And why start there, and where did you go to get the money?
It's a great question. There was actually a report out earlier this week at the FT. How many people know about that report I'm talking about? Well, some people. And that reported that BuzzFeed's like doing really badly financially, basically, and everyone was like really excited to like report that report. But the reality is that actually, what's amazing is that BuzzFeed is doing so well financially right now. Like, we spent basically 2015 building for a future that was cross-platform and global and distributed. And we brought in a ton of revenue in 2015, record growth, double-digit year-over-year gains. But the reality was that in 2015, that reality hadn't arrived. And in 2016, that future that we were building for in 2015 has actually arrived. And so everything that we have been investing in 2015 has now totally come to fruition on the revenue side. Whereas in 2015, we built up a lot of audience, and in 2016, the revenue is catching up. So it's it was kind of like a shocking report for us, but we were but we know internally that it's actually going incredibly well. We're exceeding targets in 2016. And so in terms of the platform, it's sort of the same thing, right? You build up, you build up the audience, you build up the expertise, you build up the fans, and then you monetize them. That's many platforms, and Facebook itself basically did that. Instagram itself did that. And so that's the glory of having venture capital. And so for Facebook in particular, we certainly have a lot of audience on Facebook. It's not at, the monetization hasn't been as much as the audience, but that's to be expected. But Facebook just released a new branded content policy. I don't know if you saw that 2 weeks ago. And so the opportunities are much bigger, and they continue to get bigger. And I have no doubt that it will catch up or become a lot more significant. But also the thing about revenue and platforms that you have to understand is that there are lots of different platforms, but they all are connected to each other. And so if you are good at moving audience from one platform to another platform, for example, a platform that has a lot of audience that monetizes less well, to a platform that is smaller but monetizes better, then it's pretty good. And BuzzFeed is actually really good at that. Like, we can move people from Facebook to other places. That's basically one of the things we do well.
That's really well said. So here's what we're going to do, because we're over time and everybody, especially after watching the tasty videos, wants to eat and drink. So this will be the last question, and then we'll just bum rush the hall for drinks across the way.
That was chivalry at its best. Thank you. I noticed the examples that we got from Mic and CNN were clearly stories that took time to roll out. And I'm curious to know how you can maximize on this multi-platform nature with a daily news grind. I mean, obviously it wouldn't be to this degree, but I'm in a newsroom where we're trying to capitalize on all of these different platforms coming at us. But when you have a 6 o'clock show and a regular daily grind, how do you achieve this or something similar to this?
You get yourself out of the place where you're constantly thinking about, I need to think about the 6 o'clock show. You always start with the story, and you say, if this is the story, you try a handful of things, right? You can have a little bit of it. Does it need a hashtag? Is there something I need to think about in terms of a specific audience or a group I want to reach? And I can tag them and I can think about them on Facebook or Twitter. Is there something, these things can get really easy to do in small ways every single day. And it goes beyond just, posting the link to the headline or the video package somewhere. You can edit just a little bit for those platforms. And when you start to use that muscle, it gets really easy to do that really quickly. And so it's not that you need to think about, at CNN we've gone from thinking about TV, and it's been this way, it was this way when I was at the Times and the IHT and the LA Times, to gone from thinking about what are we going to do on the website that's derivative of what we're doing from the paper, or what are we going to do on the website that's going to be derivative of what we're doing on air? No, it starts with the story and then platforms from there. And then you kind of look at how big, you got to calibrate. Is it a big thing? Is it multiple days? Or is it just a few things that you can roll out? You guys have anything?
Yeah, I would just add that's exactly how we think about it at Mic. So in the daily, I'll just give you a very quick thumbnail into how the team works. In the sort of daily rhythm of how we're thinking about stories, we all work in Slack. I'm sure everybody here works in Slack. And in one of our Slack channels, it's called, there's a stories idea room, and then there's a where this works room. And all of the different desks have their own Slack channels, and they have conversations about stories and pitching and all these different processes. It's like a fascinating thing to watch. I wish someone would actually just make a movie of that. It's a very cool thing. So, once there's story pitches that have been formed in these editors' channels, then you can move into this stories idea room where you start workshopping that with some of the managing editors, have conversations about those stories. And then we move over to the Where This Works room, where all of the audience team sits and program for all the various channels. And they start talking about stories. And hey, this will work for Tumblr. By the way, our Tumblr audience is super strong, and they don't come online until 3 in the afternoon because they're in school all day. I mean, we have a really young audience. So when we think about a story that would work for, say, Snapchat, okay, somebody from the audience team, this will work really well on Snapchat. So we think about that. Should we do it exclusively for Snapchat? Maybe. And then if we want to do a version of that for Tumblr, we've got a little time to work on it, maybe do a GIF set of it, pull a short form writer into that and produce something very specifically for that platform. And that just happens throughout the cycle of our day. And it's a very sort of I call it adaptive storytelling, adaptive journalism by platform. And that's really how we think about it at the very beginning. So again, it starts with a story idea, and I want to do the story, and then we sort of where best does it sit, but the core of that, I would say, is that every story should have a platform home in some way. Never launch on something if you don't know what the target is, because I think how you think about the way you would actually tell that story could be different depending on the sort of main platform target.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cory. Thank you, Dao. Thank you, Sheila, Columbia. Thank you all for being here. Very much. This was an honor. Thank you.
Take a picture of 3 of you together. Sure.